California on Tuesday. With us on the telephone, Shelley Douglass of Puget Sound Agape and of Ground Zero in Bangor. And Shelley, there are a lot of people that have something to say this afternoon. Let's get back on the telephone. Good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Good afternoon. A couple things. One, the fact that they're exhibiting the typical juvenile attitude of not wanting to take responsibility for their own actions. Like, tell your kid if you climb the tree and you fall out, you're going to break your arm. He does it, and then he blames you because you didn't stop him. Another thing, this whole thing could have been orchestrated by the group itself, because now, instead of being page 4 or 5, which they've been on, now they have a martyr and they're on page 1. And it's even better that he survived, because now they'll be able to wheel him out in every one of these and say, look at what these bad people did.
Well, that's a mighty cynical attitude, is all I would say. But the question still of responsibility, I think, is a fair one, Shelley. What about the responsibility that individuals take who decide, as an act of conscience, to put themselves out in a situation like this?
Yeah, we certainly take on the responsibility for that risk. I would never argue that. And we have to be willing to abide by the consequences. That's why, in a lesser degree of risk, that's why we show up in court and go to jail when we're convicted.
Sure.
And with Brian, from what I've heard of what he said since he awakened, he has both not decided not to do this anymore, but he also has said that it was a risk that he was willing to take because he thought the cause was important enough.
Does it mean, then, that it is inappropriate to blame the railroad, the Navy, the government, or whatever for what happened to him?
Well, I'm not sure that placing blame is helpful. I think that, to some degree, because of the society we live in and the way our structures and processes work, that we all bear some responsibility, because he was motivated to take this action by the fact that even though, as you said, opinion polls show widespread non-support for Contra-aid intervention in Central America, the president continues to do it privately when he can't get congressional support. So it's a kind of action that's only needed when democracy is breaking down, and we're all responsible for that. So to try and pinpoint an individual, it may be necessary, I don't know, but I'm not sure that that's really where we need to examine the responsibility.
To the watch line this time. Good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Yes, I'd like to speak in reference to protest. I'm not anti-protest. I believe in everybody's right to protest. I would like to get out and kick some of the politicians out personally, and also take direct action against some of the government actions to break down. When we have to take action, is that only when it suits their purpose that they feel the democratic process breaks down. Personally, I feel that they gave the government an option, as the man said, 3 options. They elected to take the 3rd one, and which was their prerogative.
All right. Any response, Shelley?
Well, I think that the last part is correct, and I think that shows a lot about our government if that's when they choose. But on the broader question of democracy and when it functions, I think what we're doing is part of democracy. It was part of democracy during the Civil Rights Movement when I was arrested for marching in the South, because there are some things that need to be changed that are just too deep to change simply by lobbying and writing letters and electing candidates. We do that too. But sometimes for some changes you need more.
All right, again to the phone. Seattle, good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Yes, Jim, I think it's a great show, but I know you have a young son and all that, and one day he might get involved in something like this, and I do believe that, I was involved in the middle of the Vietnam War, and when everybody was protesting, I hate to think that just because we're out there and those National Guard had their guns loaded, that meant, okay, they could just level them at the crowd, shoot, and say, well, you had a responsibility. You knew they were there, and you knew they had the guns, and so when they fired into that crowd indiscriminately, I think you'd sing a different tune if your son was mowed down on something like that.
Sure. I mean, what happened at Kent State was a disaster, and the National Guard and the command of that guard was certainly responsible, not the students who had gathered to demonstrate in opposition to the war. But what I keep coming back to in this case is why, Mr. Willson, as the train was coming at apparently 17 to 18 miles an hour, in absence of any specific agreement that it was going to stop, why he wouldn't move off the tracks. It's a tragedy what happened to him. I'm not denying that.
Yeah, there are some unbelievably, well, there's always, like I think the young lady said, in any crowd you're going to get somebody that's more dedicated than others. And to literally execute the man because he's more dedicated. he was on the track, granted, and all that. That's just it. They should have stopped the train. It's not a life and death situation for that train to have stopped, but it was for the man sitting on the tracks. And I look at it as the Vietnam War. Right now, I think everybody looks back in retrospect and says, thank God everybody got out there and did protest. It turned out it was the wrong thing. We shouldn't have been there.
Yep.
And I think that one day we're going to see that this man that sacrificed his life was the same way. So let's wake up and let's stop the next doggone train.
Thank you very much for the comment, sir. Shelley, any response to what the gentleman has had to say?
Well, I agree. I think that it's important not to focus so much on Brian Willson that we lose sight of the issue that he was trying to raise. And the issue is people who are being killed every day in Central America. And it's those people that we need to save. And then people like Brian don't have to sit on the track, so we don't have to worry about who's responsible.
The phone's again in Seattle. Good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Yes, well, I was just wondering how far all this civil disobedience can go. They're doing a street project in my area, and all the neighbors are protesting it, and I suppose if we all went out there and laid in the street when the heavy equipment comes along, you think they would stop for us? I just don't know.
I think so. I think they'd stop and arrest you all and let you go on your way.
Oh, you think so? Well, anyway, another thing is I think we all should be responsible for our actions, and I don't think this man was, because he certainly had plenty of time to get himself off those tracks. Why don't they go out to the airport and lay down in the runways where maybe a cargo plane is coming in, and who knows what they've got in their cargo. They wouldn't do that, though, because they're just too yellow-livered.
Okay. Again in Seattle. Good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Hello, it's I.
Hi there.
Hi, my brother and I always have a question. I work for a painting outfit, and I have a tough time getting a day off to go to a Mariners game in the afternoon. And I wonder if these people don't have jobs, and if they can't, don't have a job to go, to rather go protest.
That's a strange question if you ask me, but let me try and rephrase that a little, Shelley. Who are the people that take part in the Ground Zero protests in Bangor?
Well, all kinds of people. They do take days off work to come, as a matter of fact, or they work part-time so they have more free time. We have teachers and doctors and nurses and lawyers and machine shop workers and pet groomers and bookstore clerks and, I could probably go on and name all kinds of people.
How are these people trained for what it is you're going to do? I know that there is training involved. You don't just tell somebody to go out and sit on a railroad track somewhere. You try and prepare them, huh?
Yeah, well, we have two parts to the training. Part of it is almost like a retreat, where we ask people to think carefully about the consequences and what might happen, like what happened in California and the jail sentences, and about why they want to do this, and whether they're really capable of coping with 6 months in jail, and how their families feel about it, and what their own reasons are for feeling they need to do it, and just try and think through together all the reasons why it would be better not to do it, and see if the reasons for doing it outweigh them. That's part of it. And then we do a lot of role-playing where we act out situations that might arise and help each other think through nonviolent responses to, say, police brutality or a heckler in the crowd or, things going wrong that we didn't expect.
Have you had any problems with all the protests that you've organized at Bangor with either Burlington Northern or the military?
Oh, well, the major problem is the arms race. We have that disagreement.
Yes, but I mean, have there been instances of brutality from the Kitsap County Sheriff's Department or from the railroad or anybody else?
No, we've been out here for 10 years, and our relationships in the beginning were much more rocky than they are now.
Yeah.
At this point, we have relationships of trust and respect, I think, with the county sheriff, and to some extent with Burlington Northern, and the Trident-based people refuse to meet with us.
Yeah.
When they come out and arrest us, we also seem to have relationships of respect with them.
Again to the phones in Seattle for Shelley Douglass of Ground Zero in Bangor. Good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Yeah, Jim, I think that Mr. Willson really bears the responsibility of his own actions, and I really resent Shelley saying that we're all responsible. I don't feel responsible in the least, and I think he's going to have a lot of long evenings to sit there and contemplate the stumps of his legs and try to decide how wrong or how right he was and how big a price he paid for it. And I think he's going to find himself asking, was it worth it? And the strange part about it is now that we'll wind up supporting him. He'll be drawing a pension. He'll be getting a disability now in addition to probably what he's already getting. So
he's going to have some long, dark evenings to contemplate what's happened to him. I think he may decide that it was a pretty terrible price to pay.
Well, of course, none of us will be able to determine that. Certainly, we'll get some pretty good ideas on the questions he will undoubtedly ask, but as to the answers, none of us can ever know. How is it that, Shelley, you say that we're all responsible for what happened to Brian Willson?
Well, what I mean is that because we're citizens of the country where, at least theoretically, we control the foreign policy, because the foreign policy is contrary to what the polls at least say we think as citizens, it's our responsibility to make the politicians do what we believe is right.
Right.
And if we do that, then those of us who feel extra passionately about a particular issue don't have to take the kind of civil disobedience action that's being taken now. I don't think that any one of us is responsible for Brian personally, but we're all responsible for a society and the condition that the society is in.
Mm-hmm.
That's where our responsibility comes in.
All right, again to the phone. Seattle, good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Oh, Jim, in this morning's paper, it stated that this fellow that sat on the tracks spent a lot of time in Nicaragua, and he came back east.
Sir, I've got to interrupt here for one reason. Now, we have a rule on this radio program, 3 days between calls, and I talked to you yesterday on the air, and it's not that I don't appreciate your point of view. 3 days between calls. That means I don't want to hear from you again for a couple of days. Please. Good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Hi.
Hi there.
I just wanted to say that I really admire Brian Wilson's courage and conviction, and that I think the Navy needs to be held accountable for their actions in not only this situation, but in a lot of other situations. And I wish there were more people that were willing to risk their lives for peace and not war. The other thing I wanted to say was about when Hans and Sophie Shaw went and out, and resisted Hitler and the Nazis. We look back at them now and we think they're heroes. We think they're, wonderful people, and we make movies about them. Mm-hmm. But when somebody sits in front of a train and risks their life, he really put his life on the line. Mm-hmm. We look at it as a lot of people think, oh, this is suicide. And I think there's something really wrong with that track of thinking.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you for the comment. Shelley, how do you think what Mr. Willson did will affect the protest movement, civil disobedience movement, and the specific issue here of aid to the Contras? Do you think in any way it's likely to be a factor?
Well, I hope that it will make people think more seriously. I hope that it will inspire those of us who are already concerned to work harder and to try and be as dedicated as Brian is. We may not choose the same methods that he's chosen, but I think it's incumbent on all of us as citizens and just as human beings to take responsibility for what's going on.
Again, in Seattle, good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Yes, hello.
Hi there.
In regards to this whole situation, the way it appears to me is that it boils down to the final line of law and order. And what situations are not of this magnitude to John Q. Public? There might be interest on his payments or something. We can't take vigilante stances and take up situations in banks, for instance, because we don't like it, we don't approve it. And where will a situation like this, which comes up so often, where will it end? My situation here is, where is the law and order? Where is the rule? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I have to say, Shelley, that, it is incumbent on all of us to obey the laws. Individuals have had the option in this country, in this free society for a long time, to willingly and peacefully violate a law as an act of symbolic protest when that individual is then prepared to take the consequences of that. That goes back to the beginnings of our country, and there have been instances throughout of peaceful nonviolence, illegal actions. We're not talking here about somebody mugging somebody and running down the street. When you people do your protests, you do it fully expecting to pay the legal consequences of violating that law.
That's right. Well, at least I, personally, as a person who does sometimes violate the law, feel it a much greater responsibility than to observe the other laws, like speed limit laws and all those kinds of things, because the point of violating a law is to call the country under law to accountability.
Yeah.
And what we argue is that the foreign policy in many ways that we're carrying out now violates our own law, and that we need to be held accountable to that.
Again, in Seattle, good afternoon. You're on King 1090 with Shelley Douglass.
Yeah, Jim. Well, as far as I can see it, Mr. Willson did what he felt he had to do or wanted to do and so forth. But however, blaming the Navy or blaming the government is absolutely as ludicrous as playing Russian roulette and then turning around and blaming Smith & Wesson because they manufactured the pistol.
So you don't think that the government, the railroad, or whomever should bear any responsibility for the train not stopping? All right. Thank you very much, sir. Let's get another quick call or two in. Good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Yeah, Jim, I'd just like to put my 2 cents in here. I think that Brian Willson is a hero of mythic proportions. I think that whoever is ultimately responsible for maiming this young man is expressing the kind of subhuman behavior that is making this world that we live in a living hell. I mean, after all, his goal, his task, or what he's trying to accomplish out there is ultimately for the good of all of us. He's trying to rid this planet of these I'll use the last caller's word, ludicrous weapons and warring mentality that's going on. And I'd also like to state that he was involved in a game that was apparently, or has been apparently, well understood for the past 10 or 15 years in this country. It's a game where the protester gets in front of whatever's being protested, and they stop, and the cops come and haul them away, and so on. I believe that the man is a hero. I really do.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir. Shelley, any response there?
Well, I hope that we can all take that kind of action in our own way, because I agree that we need to work together to get rid of the war mentality.
Let's get one more in here, then we're going to have to close up for the day. Good afternoon. You're on King 1090.
Yes, I heard this while I was driving, and I got home, and I'm a little disgusted with this. I heard that people who aided the communists in Vietnam era were heroes. I don't think so. I think they were despicable traitors, and I wouldn't be praising outlaws if I was them. And I think that they have the vote just like I do. And when they can outvote us who believe in the constitutional way of redressing grievances, fine. Until they can, I think they ought to stay out from in front of trains, because if I was at the throttle, they wouldn't be safe at all.
Okay.
I think that they ought to stop and think that that if the radical left has every right to think as they wish, that's fine, but they don't have the right to break the laws that the rest of us abide by.
Well, you do, but then you are prepared to take the legal consequences of whatever kind of a violation we're talking about here. Shelley, we're all out of time, but I appreciate your time with us this afternoon and the perspective that you were able to bring to this conversation. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Good day to you now. Shelley Douglass of Puget Sound Agape, one of the organizers of Ground Zero in Bangor, where for well over 10 years now there have been fairly regular protests of trains arriving at the sub-base up there, talking about civil disobedience and about what happened on Tuesday to Brian Willson in Concord, California. King 1090 News Time, 2:53.
This week, Crime Stoppers is offering a cash reward of up to $1,000 for information leading to the arrest and the filing of charges against the person responsible.